Welcome, everyone. And we started learning Pirkei Avot, the fourth chapter. Now we're going to do Mishnah Bet. We're going to start the second Mishnah of the fourth chapter. Ben Azai Omer. There were four individuals that their first name is not mentioned. I believe they were all Shimon. The first Mishnah starts with Ben Zoma. His name was Shimon Ben Zoma. And the second Mishnah begins with Ben Azai. So it says as follows: Havei ratz la mitzvah kala. Ben Azai says that a person should run to a quote-unquote light mitzvah, uboreach, and should run away min ha'aveira, from a sin. So firstly, we have the idea of a mitzvah kala. It means that some people view a certain mitzvot to be considered as a quote-unquote serious mitzvah, and other mitzvot to be like a light mitzvah. So they don't really give much weight to the lighter mitzvot. So the Ben Azai teaches us that you should run to do even a light mitzvah, even a mitzvah which is not considered to be a heavy mitzvah, Shabbat and kosher, the great mitzvahs, even a quote unquote light mitzvah, that's also you should run to do. For example, it says regarding the mitzvah of tzitzit, that the Torah says you should have, if you have a garment of four corners, then you should put fringes, the tzitzit, on the corners. Now, if you do not have a garment of four corners, then you don't have to do the mitzvah. But what do we see? That people make a special effort to go to the store and buy a pair of tzitzit, and then they put on the tzitzit, the fringes, onto the garment, which, or you can buy it already made. It's also okay. What do we see from here? The Rambam explains that the mitzvah of tzitzit is extra special because we have the point you see where people make a special effort to try hard to go and to do this mitzvah. It's a mitzvah which seems to be like, if you have the garment, then good. If not, not. No, the mitzvah is to make to go out of your way and to do a mitzvah. That's a very, very special mitzvah. I'm not, God forbid, suggesting that tzitzit is a light mitzvah. But it may be viewed, that's all I'm saying, it may be viewed by some people as a quote-unquote light mitzvah because you don't have to do it. You just have to make an effort to go out there and to buy and to acquire a garment which has tzitzit. And we have to do this with excitement. Havei ratz the mitzvah kala. Not just to leave it to the side, but to make an effort to fulfill the mitzvah. Having said that, we also say the second part of the Mishnah, uboreach min ha'aveira. One should run away from sin. What does that mean? That if there is an opportunity for sin, God forbid, then a person should go as far away as possible from any sin. In other words, it's not just that the sin itself is bad, but we have to try to go away from any possibility to even come close to doing a sin. For example, there are two sins which are considered to be that are considered to be not only you can't do it, but you have to go. The Torah itself says an expression of going far from it. For the first mitzvah is midvar sheker tirchak. A person should a person should distance themselves from saying a lie. In other words, it's not just not to say a lie, but to go far away from saying a lie. Perhaps the reason is because it's so easy for a person to convince themselves, no one anyways knows what the truth is, or it'll be hard to find out. Or there's something called a white lie. Maybe it's not that bad. The Torah says, tirchak, distance yourself from it. Go far away. Don't even come anywhere close to lying or fooling or tricking someone. That's one mitzvah, of a prohibitive mitzvah, of course, of not lying. The other mitzvah is about not getting involved in inappropriate marital relationships. There is something which is called harchakot, to be far away, like the Torah says, lo tikrav. You shouldn't even come close to these relationships, as we read a few weeks ago in Parashat Acharei and also in Parashat Kedoshim, about the list of family members and others of these types of relationships that we're not allowed to have. So it's not just that you're not allowed to do it, but lo tikrav. So I'm comparing the concept to what it says in the Mishnah, uboreach min ha'avera, and to run away from a sin, not to come anywhere close. About a few years ago, a person related to me that after he became Torah observant, that there was an opportunity that presented, that he had met someone who he had known years earlier, and he told me how he, when the opportunity presented itself, God forbid, to commit a sin, he ran away from it very far, like with a 10-foot pole. And the person that was his colleague was offended. They did not know what was going on, but he told me that he told the person how he has changed, he has come closer to Yiddishkeit, and it was very, very inspiring for me to hear this from such a special person, being in the situation where he could have easily gotten involved in a sin, and he controlled himself, he elevated himself above the challenge, and he ran away from that opportunity. Uboreach min ha'avera. Let's move on to the next two lines of the Mishnah. Shemitzvah goreret mitzvah. For one mitzvah causes another mitzvah. Ba'avera goreret avera. And one sin, unfortunately, causes another sin. What does that mean? That means that a mitzvah and a sin are not just that specific situation. Rather, it can bring to other situations, just like you have with people. A good person is not just a good person for themselves, but that a good person can connect you with other good people, and not a good person can connect you with not good people. In other words, it says you should go away from a bad neighbor, like we learned last year in the beginning of the Pirkei Avot, and you should have good neighbors, because a good neighbor creates good energy, good a pleasant atmosphere, and unfortunately, a bad neighbor can create bad energy. So therefore, it says the same thing is by a mitzvah. When you do a mitzvah, the nature of a mitzvah is that it's a positive deed. It's not just that specific action that you did. Rather, it has a snowball effect, and it connects you with more mitzvahs. I'd rather not put a focus on the opposite, but we can still mention it. The Mishnah mentions it, that an avera, a sin, can also get a person to do another sin. So it's not just, oh, I can't do this thing, but we have to refrain from doing one sin, because we don't want, chas v'shalom, that should drag the person into doing other wrong deeds. Let's focus on the positive. The Rambam says, Maimonides states, he says, a person should always look at the world as if to be half meritorious and half obligatory, which means that it's equal. It's like a scale. Asa mitzvah achat, if a person did just one mitzvah, hichriya et atzmo bet kol haolam kulo l'kaf zchut. Person has tipped the scale for the entire world. So too for themselves. One should look at themselves as being on an equal scale, that they have half mitzvot and half the opposite. And all you have to do is one mitzvah, and you tip the scale, and you bring for yourself and for the entire world Yeshuah, B'Hatzalah, salvation and redemption for the entire world. This is an out-of-the-box thinking. And this is the secret for the success of Chabad. Most other organizations, aside from the fact that for decades, Chabad was the only one that was involved pretty much with outreach. But even today, that there are many other good organizations that are involved in outreach, the main focus is that either you become 100% observant, but if not, then it's not worth it to get into it. The Rebbe's approach is the approach of the Rambam, as he quoted many times. Maimonides states, as we just mentioned, that even one mitzvah is priceless. With one mitzvah, you connect to the Ein Sof. You connect to the infinite God above. And so therefore, if we view every mitzvah to be priceless, to be so precious, then we'll have more of a regard when we see that our friend does one mitzvah. Wow, kol hakavod. That's unbelievable that you've done this mitzvah. Is he going to do another mitzvah? I don't know. Hopefully, yes. Because we just learned in the Mishnah, mitzvah goreret mitzvah. One mitzvah causes, drags, quote unquote, brings you, connects you to another mitzvah. So it's almost like a no-brainer that once you do one mitzvah, for sure the other mitzvah will also be, another mitzvah will be done, and then another mitzvah. But it's not like we build it upon that. The basis is one mitzvah is enough. We also know that each mitzvah brings about another mitzvah. And Bezrat Hashem, the person will become 100% Torah observant. That's the goal, of course. But what happens if not? Then it's still, you've connected a person to the Ein Sof, to the infinite God. This is also an answer for those people that say, what's the point of having a tefillin stand in the central bus station? Person just came by. Maybe he never put on tefillin before. Maybe he went and, God forbid, to a non-kosher restaurant. He comes out, you put tefillin on him, and who knows what's going to be afterwards? What kind of specialty does this mitzvah have? Big deal. He just did one mitzvah. The answer is yes, correct, nachon. That one mitzvah is priceless. You've encouraged a person to do the tefillin, to give tzedakah, to light Shabbat candles. You've given them 2 little tea lights. These mitzvahs are very, very special. And the same thing is by a sin, by an avera. That one avera, one sin, can cause others. So we don't want to get involved in, God forbid, in a non-positive situation. So God forbid, it should not drag a person deeper and deeper. Then finally, the last statement of the Mishnah, Sheschar mitzvah mitzvah, uschar avera avera. For the reward of a mitzvah is another mitzvah, and the reward, quote unquote, which means the punishment of an avera, of a sin, is another. Let's start that again. Sheschar mitzvah mitzvah. For the reward of one mitzvah is the mitzvah itself, and the reward, which means the punishment of a sin, is the sin itself. What does that mean? Usually, you want to tell a person, "I'm going to give you a prize for doing something good." So you do the good thing, and you give them the prize, or you tell a child, you do something nice, I'll give you a candy. So that's something which is nice, but it's something external. Over here, what are we saying? Something fascinating. If you do a mitzvah, I'm not going to give you Gan Eden, a candy, paradise, all the other wonderful mitzvahs, all the other wonderful rewards. That's true. You'll get it. But what's the main sachar, the main reward, is the mitzvah itself. What? How could it be that when you do a mitzvah, the reward is the mitzvah itself? The answer is, you have to understand what a mitzvah is. That's the basis of the Mishnah. We talked about mitzvah kala, quote unquote, a light mitzvah. Who are we to decide what's called a heavy, a loaded, a special mitzvah, and what's called a light mitzvah? The fact itself that it's a mitzvah, that itself is a huge schut, it's a huge merit. So if we're saying that a person did a mitzvah, what's your reward? You got it, the mitzvah itself. What is a mitzvah? In Hebrew, it means a commandment. But in Aramaic, which is very similar to Hebrew, it's from the word tzavta. Tzavta means to connect. So what are we doing when we do a mitzvah? We're connecting to Hashem. Is there a greater reward than that? Is there a greater reward to connect to Hashem than that? That is the mitzvah itself. That is the reward itself. The mitzvah is the reward. Hainu hach, it's the same thing. That's what the Mishnah means. Sheschar mitzvah, mitzvah. The reward of one mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. And also on the opposite, schar avera avera. Schar means over here, it doesn't mean the reward. It means obviously the punishment. Of one sin is the sin itself. What happens when a person commits a sin, God forbid? They become disconnected from Hashem. Is there a greater punishment than to be disconnected from Hashem? There's no greater punishment. So when someone committed a sin, that is the greatest punishment. You don't have to tell a person, as they say in Hebrew, nu, oy vavoy. You did a sin, you'll go to hell. That might be true, but that is not the ultimate sin. Because when you tell a person not to do a sin, they might go to hell. They don't know what Gehenna is. They don't know what it is. So it doesn't necessarily convince them